Mr. Palmisano, do you have in front of you what's been marked as SCE 10, pages 64 through 66?
Yes, I do.
And this is a chronology of events that's been prepared and previously sponsored by Mr. Perez. Are you able to be a co-sponsor of this chronology of events?
Yes, I am.
Which means you can answer questions that other council may have about these events.
Yes, I can.
Very good. Next, I would like to ask you to have before you a series of exhibits that we have marked for identification, starting with SCE 15. Do you have that document?
I have SCE 15 in front of me.
Okay. Is this a document that you are prepared to sponsor and answer questions about?
Yes, I am.
Turn, please, to SCE 16. Do you have that document?
I have SCE 16.
And are you prepared to sponsor and answer questions about this document?
Yes, I am.
Turning to SCE 17. Same questions. Are you prepared to sponsor this and answer questions about it?
Yes, I am.
Moving now to SCE 20. Do you have that?
I have that.
Are you prepared to sponsor this and answer questions about it?
Yes, I am.
SCE 21. Are you prepared to sponsor and answer questions?
Yes, I am.
Same question for SCE 22.
Yes, I am.
Same question for SCE 23.
Yes, I am.
We're almost there. Same question for SCE 24.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. At this time, Your Honor, Mr. Palmisano is available for cross-examination.
Thank you, Mr. Weissman. Mr. Palmisano, before we start the cross-examination, would you please state and spell your name and give us your business address?
Certainly. Name is Thomas Palmisano, Palmisano. The business address, San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station, Post Office Box 128, San Clemente, California, 92672.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Palmisano. For the first cross-examination, Mr. Shapson, would you like to go first?
Actually, I believe that Mr. Giesman is going to go first.
Mr. Giesman is going to go first. Very good.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am going to go first, but I'd like to indicate that along with all the other parties, I got the four most recent pieces of correspondence this morning. Three of these four were identified by Judge Darling by date yesterday morning. I asked twice during the day, first whether we could get them by the end of the day yesterday. Mr. Weissman indicated they would try. I indicated at the end of the day that I'd like to have them last night. Mr. Weissman indicated we're working on it. Enough Edison attorneys and helpers in the room in an age of electronic communication where these documents could have been produced in a timely way, and it works a disadvantage on my client for me to be expected to sit here as I did this morning and write out cross-examination questions while the hearings are in progress. And I think the Commission should hold its regulators to a higher standard of procedural propriety. As a consequence, I've got a large number of questions. The time that it will take really is dependent on how forthcoming Mr. Palmisano is able to be, but I don't want to rule out the prospect that he may have to come back, or some of the other witnesses or authors of some of these documents might be appropriately called to testify.
Noted, Mr. Giesman. Thank you. But please go ahead. We'll see where we get.
Mr. Palmisano, my name's John Giesman. I represent an organization called the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility. And our focus in this proceeding is economic. As you know, this is phase one, and I want to direct my questions, just so that you understand the context, to the fourth item in Judge Darling's description of what she would like to see in SCE 10. Let me summarize that fourth item in terms of the information that I'm seeking. It's key knowledge about the shutdown, key operational decisions, key operational actions by the Edison Company in 2012. And again, the angle which I'm looking for is those key activities that have an economic impact. And I'm only focused on 2012. So I'd like to start with SCE 24. And to give you a hint as to where we're headed, I'm going to take this correspondence in chronological order, although it's a peculiarity of the legal profession that we number our exhibits a little more randomly than that.
Understand.
Do you have SCE 24 in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Let's go off the record for just a moment. Mr. Giesman, I need a moment to get...
Can you tell me what SCE 24 is?
Certainly. SCE 24 is a Southern California Edison memorandum from Ed Avellid, our director of our steam generator repair project, to a Dr. Koguchi of MHI.
And does Mr. Arvelas report to you?
Yes, he does.
And Mr. Koguchi is effectively Mr. Argela's counterpart at the MHI steam generator repair site team?
Dr. Koguchi is the head of the MHI steam generator site team.
Okay. In that first paragraph, there's a sentence that says, MHI requested this information formally, which was provided in several meetings since July 27th, 2012. What's the significance of that July 27th date?
The significance of that date, if you look at that time, when you think of the time frame in July, we had formed a long-term repair team under me to separate the activities from restart of Unit 2 and restart of Unit 3 in the short term from the long-term warranty repair of both units.
That was done in July?
The team was formed in July, that is correct.
Why did it take that long after the outage, that's some 6 months after the incident at Unit 3, to set up that team? The timing may be misleading to you. We were working on both short and long-term options from fairly early on, probably the March time frame, as we understood the nature of the Unit 3 steam generator wear. I determined by June to July that I needed to separate the groups to put the correct focus on the confirmatory action letter, the short-term restart, separating the focus from the long-term repairs. And what had been the long-term activity with regard to Unit 3 prior to establishment of that team?
The activity was largely inspection and understanding the current status of Unit 3 and the cause of the tube damage in Unit 3.
So how would it be distinguished from the short-term activity?
The distinction I would draw, the activity basically started as a common activity to understand the Unit 3 status, the Unit 2 status. Once we understood the nature of the fluid elastic instability and the phenomena that it represented, I separated the short-term activities to support a restart of Units 2 and Unit 3 from the long-term, which was going to take a more extensive engineering activity.
That makes sense to me. And that decision came sometime in July.
Well, the decision was made in the, I would say, the June timeframe. The group actually was staffed by the July timeframe.
Okay. Can I ask you to take a look at A4NR cross-examination exhibit 18?
I don't have that exhibit with me, if you give me a minute.
And off the record? Mr. Giesman, please go ahead, but begin with introducing this exhibit.
Yes, this is a excerpt from a transcript compiled by seekingalpha.com of quarterly earnings call conducted by Edison International and about a dozen investment analysts that are identified on the first page. The Edison executives on the call and the investment analysts are all identified on the first page. The second page is the excerpt of an exchange between Jonathan P. Arnold from Deutsche Bank and Theodore F. Craver, Chairman, Chief Executive Officer, and President of Edison International.
Thank you, Mr. Usen.
Have you had a chance to read that, Mr. Palmisano?
I have it here, and I'm reading the second page now.
I've highlighted in yellow Mr. Craver's comments that I would like you to reflect upon, and then I'll have a couple of questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
This dialogue between the investment analyst and Mr. Craver seems to be pointed to which options Edison was considering for Unit 3 in late July of 2012. Would you agree with that general characterization?
From the context of what I see here, I would agree with that.
So when Mr. Craver indicates that the uniqueness of the fluid elastic instability phenomenon had created additional challenges for Unit 3 as compared to Unit 2, would you agree with that general characterization?
Could you repeat that, please, or restate that?
Well, I'm looking at the first paragraph attributed to Mr. Craver. It says, Jonathan, this is Ted. Just a quick part on that. I think the main thing we're really trying to signal there is we probably can't address entirely the issue of keeping this phenomena, this fluid elastic instability phenomenon, from reoccurring by simply operating at reduced power in the case of Unit 3. Would you agree that in late July, operating Unit 3 at reduced power did not appear to Edison as a viable option?
I would not agree with that entirely, no.
Would you care to elaborate on why you would disagree with the way Mr. Craver put it?
I think what he was referring to at this point in time is contrasting it to the Unit 2 restart, which is predicated on reduced power operation along with preventative plugging and stabilizing of tubes. We would have to do more than that on Unit 3 for a shorter-term restart plan for Unit 3.
And in late July, what would that have entailed?
Possibly some sort of repair to the anti-vibration bar structure.
In Unit 3?
In Unit 3.
And that was actively under consideration at the time?
At that point, we were focusing on Unit 2 with the thought that once we were successful with getting authorization to restart Unit 2 on the basis we ultimately submitted in our confirmatory action letter, we would shift our focus to Unit 3, starting with the same premise and seeing what additional work would be needed for Unit 3.
And is that decision memorialized anywhere?
Not to my knowledge.
So I go down to the last paragraph on that page. The second comment attributed to Mr. Craver after the follow-up question by the Deutsche Bank analyst, Mr. Craver says, well, I think at this stage you'd expect us to have all the options on the table. At this juncture, we're just trying to do this in the most disciplined, systematic kind of step-by-step approach. I'm presuming you agree with that characterization. Is that correct?
As far as the disciplined, systematic, step-by-step approach, yes.
What about having all the options on the table?
Well, I don't know the context of Mr. Arnold's question, and not having been on the call, I'm really not in a position to speculate beyond what's written here. Okay.
Thank you. Why don't we go back then to SCE 24.
Thank you.
And it's the second full paragraph, it's one sentence paragraph that I'd like to ask you next about. It says MHI will be required to demonstrate the restoration of tube plugging margin against industry benchmarking and operating experience. I read that accurately?
Yes, you did.
How was industry benchmarking and operating experience defined by Southern California Edison?
Typically, that would imply that whatever plan MHI came up with to meet the 4 criteria, and this one highlights criteria 4, restoration of tube plugging margin, that we would expect MHI to show us experience with whatever their actions would be proposed to be, with industry experience they and others have had being successful with those actions. That's what we would expect by industry benchmarking and operating experience. In other words, go out and show us where the repairs that they would propose, whatever they may be, would be successful based on this experience at other plants.
So that would be some type of documented statistical database?
Possibly.
What else would it be?
It might be a study, an engineering study.
Okay. But more than just anecdotal evidence?
It would have to be more substantial than just an anecdotal statement. That is correct.
Can I ask your counsel to give you A4NR cross-examination exhibit 2?
And off the record. Papers. Mr. Palmisano, let us know when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Mr. Palmisano, this is a response to a A4NR data request that the Edison Company provided related to some statements found in your Unit 2 root cause evaluation. Are you familiar with the Unit 2 root cause evaluation?
Generally, yes.
And it specifically referenced the St. Lucie Unit 2 steam generator inspection results for St. Louis' third cycle as an important comparison for anti-vibration bar wear rates at songs. Were you familiar with the selection of St. Lucie Unit 2 as a comparison point?
Yes, I am.
And although the response does indicate some confusion, which is included within your Unit 2 root cause evaluation as to whether it's properly identified as CA13 or CA12, it's identified both ways in your root cause evaluation. It says CA13 is not completed. The due date for that CA is now forecast to be done in May of 2013. Is that correct?
Well, that's what I read here.
Okay. Are you familiar with whether this CA13 was ever completed in 2012?
Well, according to this, it was scheduled for May of 2013, not 2012. Am I reading the same thing you are?
You are, but your root cause evaluation had earlier assigned, I believe, a September 2012 completion date for it.
That I'm not familiar with off the top of my head.
Because I was going to ask you whether it was slowness on the St. Lucie refueling cycle or simply competing demands on your staff that had caused the delay.
And at this point, without more information, I couldn't answer that.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Giesman, if you don't mind. Mr. Palmisano, would you explain for the record exactly what CA means in this context?
CA is the abbreviation for corrective action.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Giesman.
Let's go back to SCE 24 again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I'm on your last paragraph now. The second line, that phrase, as a target based on current conditions. What does that mean?
So the second line for complete the sentence says, SCE will continue to work with MHI on the development of acceptable permanent, and in parentheses, and interim if required, remedy, and provides the above as a target based on current conditions. Based on current condition, these are the 4 criteria that we have laid out for MHI as to what a permanent repair would be required to meet to satisfy us.
So those 4 points earlier in the letter are your target.
Yes.
And when you say based on current conditions, were you reserving the ability to change the target subsequently?
I think we were just trying to be clear that should MHI have a different proposal, we would be open to it. But the way we saw things when we issued the letter, these were the criteria we would expect a permanent repair to meet.
Okay.
Basically to restore them to original condition.
Could you make certain your microphone is turned on? I'm having a little bit of a difficulty.
It's on? Tip it up? I will. Thank you.
Let's go to SCE 20 now.
Excuse me. I have that.
Can you describe what this is?
Just 1 minute. Yes. SCE 20 is a memorandum, again, from Ed Avella on my staff to Dr. Koguchi of MHI, providing more detailed criteria by which we would judge permanent repair proposals from MHI. And it's got an attachment, one that has 4 pages giving some specific criteria that we would apply in evaluating options.
Now, if I look at the body of the letter to Dr. Koguchi, in that first paragraph, there's a sentence that begins with the phrase, SCE has requested a final proposal. What communications preceded this request?
There's almost daily interaction between Avella and Dr. Koguchi, so I think he's probably referring to some of the informal discussions. There may have been formal communications. I don't necessarily have those at my fingertips, but discussions to clarify for MHI what we're expecting and what time frame.
So you're at mid-November 2012, 9.5 months after the incident at Unit 3, and you're requesting a final proposal. Is that a fair characterization?
That is a fair characterization.
Had there been semi-final proposals or quarter-final proposals or not completely thought through proposals prior to November 13th?
There had been several discussions of potential options with MHI bringing in different options they were considering prior to this.
Any of them reduced to writing?
I would have to check the record in terms of prior to November whether they had reduced things to writing. There may have been PowerPoint presentations. I don't know if they actually submitted a letter.
Go down into that next paragraph. And in that next paragraph, Mr. Avella indicates, the second sentence, each criterion indicated by underlined text will be assessed as a go, no-go condition. Now, what's that mean?
What that means, if you look at the attachment, it's probably easiest to give you an example. Do you have the attachment?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if you look at Section A, Effectiveness, Item 1, The underlying statement, does the repair resolve thermal hydraulic conditions such that songs can operate at all power levels without undue tube vibration or unacceptable wear? If the option they were to propose would not meet that, that is a no-go. In other words, we're done. That's not an acceptable option. The sub-criteria underneath that, let's say it met the first bullet, the go-no-go criteria, and we would then judge the degree of risk. Even though they may have met the criteria, there may be some risk that that their option would present. We would use that to further judge the risk.
Thank you. The next sentence says, a no-go assessment shall indicate that the specific criteria is not acceptable. And if I understood your last answer, it might be better for me to understand it as that would mean that the response to the criteria would be deemed unacceptable. Have I got that right?
Yeah, I think that's a better characterization.
Okay. Further on in that sentence, you say that thus the proposed repair is deemed not acceptable as a permanent repair. Now, what's the significance of a permanent repair?
The significance, I would tell you, given the nature of this fluid elastic instability that has affected Unit 3 and that Unit 2 is susceptible to, may take several repair steps on the part of MHI. And since they are the vendor and they are responsible under the warranty for repair to the units, they may come and propose a repair that in one step can restore the units to appropriate conditions, or they may have several steps to their repair plan. At this point, they've not given us a true final solution. We've not accepted one, so we basically said, you need to tell us what you're proposing, and here's how we'll judge it.
So you use the word permanent to effectively mean until Mitsubishi has done this, they're not done with that repair yet.
Depends on the option that they propose and whether we would deem it would be acceptable.
Okay. Go down to the next paragraph. It says, using the criteria, SCE will evaluate the MHI proposal. Am I correct in understanding that the contract that Edison has with MHI with respect to the steam generators requires some mutual agreement as to the repair plan or the solution that's ultimately deemed acceptable?
Objection. It calls for a legal conclusion.
Mr. Giesman, can you rephrase the question?
I can try.
Is this factual?
Was Mr. Avella in this letter proposing simply a unilateral evaluation by Edison of the acceptability of the MHI proposal?
Unilateral as opposed to an agreement between the two parties?
Yes.
Okay. Let me read his memo. For a second. The way I interpret the memo that Mr. Avella wrote is he is delineating the criteria and how we will evaluate the option that they propose. Ultimately, an option that is selected has to be acceptable to Southern California Edison.
Okay. The sentence goes on to say that Edison will provide feedback within 15 days of receipt of a comprehensive submittal. Was that done?
At what time? Are we still in 2012?
We're only in 2012,
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weissman.
I don't believe that we've received a comprehensive submittal in 2012.
Okay. So, in 2012, well, you must have provided some feedback to Mitsubishi in terms of the proposals you received in 2012. Did you not?
We interacted with him in 2012 to give him preliminary thoughts and feedback.
Okay. A repair, the paragraph goes on to say, a repair found not acceptable as a permanent repair will be separately assessed for adequacy as an interim repair. Were there pre-established criteria for what interim meant?
Not to my knowledge.
So, if I were Dr. Kiguchi, how would I distinguish between what Edison was calling a permanent repair and an interim repair?
I think we've made it pretty clear to MHI, going back to SCE 24, what the 4 criteria for an acceptable repair is going to be. And if something didn't meet that and they proposed a multiple-step repair, we would look and then decide what would be interim as opposed to permanent.
Okay. Why don't we go to SCE 21? Can you tell me what this is?
Yes, just 1 minute, please. Let me scan that. Okay, I reviewed this. So repeat your question, please.
Can you explain what this exhibit is?
Yes, this is a letter from Mr. Pete Dietrich, the Senior Vice President and Chief Nuclear Officer from Southern California Edison, to a Mr. Yamamuchi, who is, I don't know his specific title, I believe he may be President of Mitsubishi Nuclear Energy Systems, which is their U.S. subsidiary. And the letter lays out some specific perspectives and requests from his perspective as Chief Nuclear Officer.
And you're a Navy veteran, are you not?
Yes, I am.
In a chain of command sense, do you report to Mr. Dietrich?
I report to Mr. Dietrich, that is correct.
Do you have any role in drafting or helping to draft this letter?
I would review it.
So you're familiar with its terms?
Somewhat, yes.
You're familiar with the words chosen?
To a degree. I did not draft it, I was just in the review process.
Do you have some insight as to why certain words were chosen?
That I probably couldn't speak to.
What about the general tone of the letter?
The general tone I could speak to.
And as you'd indicated, Mr. Avella is on your staff, the author of SCE 20 and SCE 24.
That is correct.
Am I correct in sensing that these 3 letters demonstrate an increasing level of toughness?
What I would say is the Avella letters certainly demonstrate we're getting very specific with MHI in terms of the criteria they have to meet to help them understand what we expect.
And with respect to the Dietrich letter, which came about 15 days after the last Avella letter, how would you characterize that tone?
I think from a senior company officer to a senior officer in Mitsubishi Nuclear Energy Systems, it's clear that we're making our expectations clear in terms of timeliness and what the criteria we would expect them to respond to are.
The first paragraph in that letter concludes with the observation, in addition, limited tube-to-tube wear has been detected in one of the Unit 2 steam generators. Why wasn't the wear at the retainer bar or the anti-vibration bars or the tube support plate mentioned here?
Because the most significant wear that is preventing Song's Unit 2 from restarting is tube-to-tube wear. The anti-vibration bar wear, the retainer is understood across the industry. The retainer bar wear was a fairly limited phenomena that has been isolated. The tube-to-tube wear is the phenomena that concerns us in terms of why it occurred and is currently really the subject of the confirmatory action letter in the NRC review.
When you made your presentation at the Edison NRC public meeting in Laguna Hills in late November 2012, didn't you call the retainer bar problem in Unit 2 a clear design defect?
I don't have the transcript of the discussion, so without seeing that, I couldn't recall my specific words.
In November of 2012, did you think of it as a clear design defect?
The retainer bar wear is a design problem with respect to the retainer bar that affects a limited number of tubes.
But it wasn't significant enough to mention in this letter from Mr. Dietrich to Mr. Yamachi?
That is correct.
And similar with the anti-vibration bar, where that wasn't considered significant enough to mention in this letter from Mr. Dietrich to Mr. Yamachi?
This specific letter was focused on the repairs related to the unexpected tube-to-tube wear based on fluid elastic instability. That's why the letter is focused the way it is.
Edison was content with the amount of wear in the other types of wear phenomena?
Not at all. But the amount of wear in the wear phenomena is better known in the industry. It is manageable and the plant could operate with it. This is the type of wear that prevents the plant from operating at the current time.
So if you found a similar defect, say in the pistons of your new car, you took it back to the dealer because that was a known or understandable wear, you'd be content to accept that in your new car?
No, and that's not what our letter says.
Your letter neglects to point out any concern about wear at the retainer bar, the anti-vibration bar, or the tube support plate.
As I said, the letter is focused on the tube-to-tube wear phenomena, which is the more significant and complex phenomena that has to be dealt with.
The next paragraph in the letter contains a lengthy first sentence that ends with the phrase, that provides confidence that Unit 2 can be operated safely at reduced power, at least for the near term. Now, what does that mean, at least for the near term?
First of all, that entire sentence is recognizing MHI and SCE's cooperation and collaborative efforts with respect to the shorter-term restart strategy for Unit 2. And at least for the near term, I think indicates that there may be further work to do for longer-term operation of Unit 2.
So how long was the near term going to be?
It's not defined in this letter.
So if I'm Mr. Yamachi, what am I supposed to interpret Edison is meaning by using the phrase, at least for the near term?
I don't think there's anything to be interpreted there. I think it's the final sentence in that paragraph says that SCE appreciates MHI's support during that effort. That's what that paragraph was conveying.
Then we go to the next paragraph. It starts, however, as we both know, considerably more actions are needed. What more actions were needed on Unit 2?
Well, to read the rest of the sentence, it says, considerably more actions are needed for the steam generators of both units to return their service at full power, fully functional for the 40-year life. As we look at the restart of Unit 2, we've proposed a restart, under the confirmatory action letter and a limit to 70% power. That is for an interim period. That is certainly not where we want to be for the life of the plant. We want to see the steam generators return to full capability. That is what we've told MHI in that paragraph.
But what does considerably more actions mean in that context? Did you have anything specifically in mind that you expected of Mitsubishi with regard to Unit 2?
With respect to both units, we expect a comprehensive repair proposal that would restore the steam generators to full power for the full 40-year life.
Beyond the expiration of the current licenses?
Well, the 40-year life of the steam generator is not tied necessarily to the expiration of the power plant's license.
Your Honor, may I have resisted the temptation to object because I wanted to give counsel some latitude, but I really think we're getting very far beyond the concept of costs incurred in 2012. So I would object to a continuation of this line of questioning unless counsel can link this discussion to costs.
Agreed. Mr. Giesman, please try and keep it focused.
Your Honor, given Edison's ambiguous language in communicating with MHI and unclear course of action going forward in mid-2012, all of these ambiguities have to do with the reasonableness of costs incurred in 2012.
If you can, please link it to those costs.
Certainly.
Yeah, actually, we've been going for over 90 minutes now. So I think now would be a good time to take a break. So let's come back at 3 o'clock, 10 minutes. All right, off the record.